Blog Talk Radio.
Ah, yes. You know what the sound of the vuvuzela means. It's time for the Get More Sports World Tour Soccer Podcast. Hello, everybody. I am EJ Garr, your host of the show. It's a pretty big show this week. Got a lot going on, of course, around the world. We have Champions League going on this week. We have Europa League going on this week. We might be having, hopefully we're having Phil Schoen from beINsports coming on the show this week, and that would be tremendous. Hopefully he gets a chance to call in. Of course, we're going to discuss the North American Soccer League as well as MLS and work our way around Spain and England. And got a lot to discuss here, so let's start breaking some of this stuff down. Of course, Champions League is happening right now. Two absolutely huge matches going on, of course. You see now it's 2-0 already, Porto. In the 15th minute, as we talked about this, we're coming on the air now at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a Wednesday, and Porto's already taken it to Bayern Munich, which we almost had to expect here. I mean, Bayern Munich walks into there a little bit wounded. Of course, Barcelona is in Paris, taking on Paris Saint-Germain without Ibrahimovic, which is a huge loss for them. Of course, Reddy's out of that lineup too, so kind of figured it was going to be an uphill battle for Paris Saint-Germain without some of their big names in there. But let's get started. Of course, now you want to talk about North American Soccer League. If any of you didn't have a chance to catch it, I got a chance to sit down with both coaches for the New York Cosmos and the Tampa Bay Rowdies this week on our New York Cosmos Soccer Podcast. You can check us out at Sports Palooza Radio or the North American Soccer League homepage with the Cosmos. You can see we are the top billing for their podcast over there. That's tremendous. We absolutely love that. Of course, Tampa Bay will be taking on New York at Stewart Stadium, where I will be, of course, on Saturday. You can't cover the team and not expect me to be there. So I'll certainly be there a little bit early, taking part with everybody with Pele's head and all those guys doing the pregame stuff. So we're certainly going to have a good time down at Stewart Stadium on Saturday. That's good stuff. Minnesota's going to be taking on Ottawa. Atlanta's going to be headed to Carolina at WakeMet Park. Indy 11, who we just faced at the Cosmos, put up a good fight. They're going to be at Toyota Field playing San Antonio. We're looking for their first win of the year in Fort Lauderdale. They'll be headed to Edmonton. Of course, that's big stuff. I love the North American Soccer League. A lot of people see it as a second tier, and I get that. But, there's a lot of important stuff going on there. There's some big name coaches, some big name players coming down there. So it's not certainly not a league to be taken lightly with Raul, and especially of course for the Cosmos. I mean, to see Raul, Marco Senna, and Jimmy Maurer, and all those guys over there, there's plenty of talent on that Cosmos side. But we'll see what happens there. Of course, like I said, I'll be at the Cosmos home opener myself. Hopefully, you'll be there. All right, let's get to the MLS side of what's going on here because, there's a lot going on in MLS this week. It's Vancouver and Dallas both struggled. We saw that. San Jose took it to Vancouver last weekend. And speaking of taking it to you, Colorado certainly got off the schneid. And everyone saw it. Of course, they took advantage of Dallas. Dallas was, they were trying to play for first place, and Colorado was seen as the club that couldn't put anything together. They hadn't scored a single goal going into that match, and they, it just comes. Sometimes it just comes. If you actually check my my previews over at beINsports for that match, you see I called for it. I actually even mentioned the Colorado Rapids in my on my Twitter feed saying, hey, you guys owe me. I called for you guys breaking out this week, so, give me some props. So that was good to see them finally break out of that. I mean, to not have any goals through 5 matches there was, or 4 matches, I should say. It's good to see them breaking out and trying to get it because now everybody in that Western Conference is sitting at 6 points to 13 points, and the West is certainly wide open right now. All the early season struggles seem to be over, even though Portland and Colorado only have 1 win to show for their 5 or 6 outings this year. Certainly the West is certainly tight. Montreal still a little struggling. The only team to have not found a way to the win column this year. 2 draws and 2 losses. But amazingly enough, they're in the Champions League final. That's going to be an interesting match here. We'll see how that goes. It was weird to see Montreal actually advance all the way to the finals. It's a great job. I don't think a lot of people expected Montreal to actually get there, but they did, and good for them. Now they have to try and take some MLS a little more seriously, because with 2 goals scored and no wins, certainly not going to help them down the stretch here. And of course, we know Montreal didn't even win a single match on the road last year, and the road woes are certainly continuing. I can't believe Toronto has to play 8 straight away matches to start the season. They're certainly struggling out of the gate with only 1 win. And that hurts, but at the same token, it's going to come as a benefit later when they end the season. I think they have 10 of their last 13 games at home, and that's certainly going to help them later. So this is a little bit of a give and take there. What can you do, right? What else do we have in the DC United? Still obviously hanging on to that first place in the Eastern Conference with the New York Red Bulls right behind them. And Orlando City came up with a big win on the road. They made their way out to the West Coast, taking on Portland, and found a 2-0 result, put together a fantastic game. I mean, anybody who saw that Orlando City-Portland game certainly is convinced that Orlando City actually has a little bit of oomph over there. That team has some, obviously, Kaká, and everyone knows Kaká, who he is. Everybody who follows European football certainly knows who Kaká is, and he's certainly benefiting that team a ton. Of course, Orlando City, got to the MLS without him. And now, they're holding their own. I mean, second place at this point is great. Through 6 matches to be in second, tied for second place with New York and New England, who are both established clubs in this league. Of course, Orlando City has to be happy with that. And so we're going to get, I definitely want to get into some of the matches that we're going to see in MLS this weekend, because those are, we have Philadelphia and New York City, Yankee Stadium. And that stadium is so, I don't know how people actually move. I mean, it's so tight. It's only 70 yards. It's not easy to we've seen 200s there at Yankee Stadium this year, and it's going to be hard to really snap that when you can really keep the middle so compact, and it's really hard to stretch the field, obviously, when you have no room to do it. So that's going to be an interesting match. Philadelphia ended up, of course, winning their 2-1 match with them last weekend. That took a late 92nd minute goal, and that was quite a goal. It was big. Goaltender Saunders couldn't come up with that save. He kind of left it right there in the middle of the box, and you can't do that. I mean, you just can't leave a ball sitting there. Of course, he converted and got Philadelphia 3 points a day, much needed. I mean, they needed those points pretty bad. So those two are going to face off again at Yankee Stadium tomorrow. I'm actually thinking about taking that over. Something tells me those two are going to get into a big clash tomorrow. That, obviously, we're going to see some fouls, and there's going to be some tempers going on there with the way the last meeting ended last weekend. You hate to see a team lose in the 92nd minute. At the same token, you know what? Because football, and that happens. I mean, what can you do? But here we go. It looks like we now have Phil Schoen from beINsports joining us on the show. Phil, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fine, EJ. Yourself?
Oh, fantastic. I know I only have you for a few minutes here because you have a busy day going on. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate you taking the time.
No problem at all. I'm not really moving fast at the moment. I found out last night why I call the games rather than play them. So forgive me if I moan and groan just a little bit more than normal.
I saw your Twitter feed, man. You're trying to hang out with 15-year-old kids kicking a soccer ball around, and the old knee gave out on you, huh?
Absolutely. But it was okay. I keep my fingers crossed I can tape it up together and be out there again soon. But it's always fun play. I mean, that's, in all honesty, where the love of this game comes, is when you're out there kicking it yourself.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. I played my whole career all the way through college, so I definitely know what you mean. It's fun to get out there. I mean, even if you're not ready or not, I mean, what do you do? If somebody wants to say, hey, let's go kick a ball, how many are you going to say, no?
Absolutely. You got that right.
Yeah, you love this sport. When I was looking at your Twitter feed, I love your little byline, man. I tell stories. Sometimes as they happen. That's fantastic, man. What a great thing for a commentator to put on his Twitter feed. I mean, and you're a great commentator, man. Great commentator.
You are too kind. I am honestly blessed to do what I do, with whom I do it, and where I do it. It's a dream come true. So just try not to screw it up too much every so often. I guess when you take a look at this sport, how much it's grown, because I grew up playing the game as well. I grew up at Lockhart watching Ray play, and to just see how much this sport that we love has progressed. And right now, the sky's the limit. I know it's gotten to the point where the dinosaurs have kind of died off when it comes to ridiculing the sport and maybe actively ignoring it. Now, I think perhaps they kind of recognize it, but they diminish its impact. I kind of have a feeling probably within the next generation or two, they won't even be able to do that because there's just so many people that have been exposed, and once you have the bug, it's hard to beat it. So I grew up being the kid that would be first at the 7-Eleven, grabbing the Street and Smiths or the Athlon to find out what was going on in basketball or baseball, and poring over the who's who for every single stat. And just more and more as I've fallen in love with the sport, I could barely care less. I mean, my son is probably like I was, although still with a love of soccer, but that's kind of how I guess stay in touch with what's going on in the quote-unquote real world. But in my mind, there's just nothing that can compete with this beautiful game.
Yeah, and beautiful game it is. Perfect word. And ironically, I'm going to be headed to Stewart Stadium this weekend because Pele and Beckenbauer are going to be in the house, and I could not resist getting tickets to that game. So I will be at Stewart Stadium, and Pele will be there. I talk about the beautiful game. We know there is no more beautiful man than Pele.
No, and it is amazing to see what is going on in New York. I personally, I know there's because we kind of have the same thing down here, although we only have one quote-unquote top-flight team or nearly top-flight team, but we're still arguing with ghosts that will hopefully come to fruition with an MLS side. But I'm a bit jealous because even if the Cosmos or NASL, they're putting on a first-class show, and it's a wealth of riches. And I know I get into arguments on Twitter sometimes in regards to promotion relegation because I just don't – I think from a playing perspective, we are there. From a player perspective, we are there. I just have doubts that, say, for example, the Cosmos earn promotion and the Red Bulls get relegated, that all that money that the Red Bulls have just dries up. I don't think we have enough billionaires that are lining up to throw their money at the sport just yet. But when I started in this back in, almost quarter of a century ago, and even before the start of MLS, it had gotten to the point where soccer fans had moved from the register probably to the boardroom. I'd say now they're in some decision-making capacities as the generation just progresses, but we're probably not that far along. Like I said, maybe a generation or so from the point where the real decision-makers, the guys that sign the checks, are going to be soccer people. We're already seeing a few of them, and I think we're going to see more and more. I mean, we're already kind of seeing some of these guys realize from an investment capacity what the potential is, and they're buying overseas. It would be great to see even a fraction of that money invested here in the States because we're not that far away. I know we had, Project 2010, and Klinsmann has his goal, but we're getting close. And I don't know if we're quite ready to show it. Perhaps tonight in San Antonio we'll get a little bit of a peek, but the sky is the limit, and we're headed in the right direction. Even if there's a pitfall or a step back every so often, I just don't think that this story is going to end badly for soccer in the U.S.
Yeah. Did you listen to my podcast today? Because I actually had Coach Rongen and Coach Gio on my show, and I asked them both about the promotion and relegation portion, and they both absolutely support it. And, when we bring up how the small clubs might suffer against the bigger clubs and all that, but look at Ibar. Ibar has, 5,000 people they can put in that stadium, and they're in top-flight football. Well, who's to say that these smaller clubs can't compete with these big markets? I totally disagree that small clubs cannot compete with big market clubs.
But see, again, from my mind, that's nothing to do with promotion relegation. I think you could even go back to the very first couple of years of MLS, where if you might have say, switched Marco Echeverry from team to team, there were teams like Rochester, maybe even a Harrisburg, that would have been beating most of the MLS teams at that point. So, again, from that perspective, we are ready. I think that it is great, and I hope we see some rub-off in the Open Cup. Personally, I think that it would be great if the Federation would really step up and their sponsors would step up. I think kind of like Santa Anita in horse racing, if you get that $1 million prize for the winner, it gives the players, it gives the club some incentive, it gives you kind of a magic round number to market around, because I still think, and in all honesty, we see it in every single cup competition now, even the FA Cup, where you see reserve teams stepping in until the later rounds. I think we've already started to see that from an MLS perspective, that's just asking for disaster, asking for embarrassment. So, again, I think as we see teams like a New York, like a Tampa Bay, with two great icons of the game. I love Gio, and he's proving to be a pretty good coach. I think handling the Marco Senna situation brilliantly. I think as Raul steps in, it'll be interesting to find out, but you won't have a better worker or a better teammate than Raul, so I don't foresee any problems there. And then Thomas Rongen is truly, if you have the chance to watch the story about American Samoa in the last World Cup qualifying, it is a can't-miss movie, and you get a general idea of what type of guy he is. And I had a chance to watch him as a player. I've had the chance to work with him. I could call him my friend, and Tampa Bay got themselves a very good one. So, again, I'd love to see the NASL strengthened. I'd love to see the day, and Indianapolis as well, with the 11 and Peter Wilt. I think that's a good story that could happen and really step up. But I'd love to see the day, and it's not that far away, 10, 15 years maybe, where we can truly talk about promotion relegation without seeing it cripple some of these teams that would end up going down. I think, in all honesty, what's going to happen first is going to be, and especially when you take a look at expansion with Sacramento, San Antonio, Las Vegas, and some of these other teams, not to mention a Miami and maybe a Carolina, Indianapolis perhaps. Some of these teams that are shooting for MLS, I kind of sense that we're going to see MLS expand probably to about 26 to 28, and then there's going to be a huge decision. And I wouldn't be surprised to see them maybe even go to 32, and then the next one maybe just even absorbing en masse, some type of merger a la AFL and NFL, where you end up creating an in-house promotion relegation, to the point where, similar to what we see in the Premier League, you have some parachute payments and you don't risk flushing your investment down the drain for one bad year. So, again, it's going to happen. The stars are moving into alignment. I think, in my mind, the only argument is when. And I would agree with a lot of the people that are calling for it that it's going to take a visionary. You got to take a risk to take that first step. But I'm not quite sure we're there yet.
Yeah, to thin out the MLS like that, to put up 32 teams, now you're talking about really thinning out the league, and that would be a perfect opportunity to have teams almost earn their way to the MLS, if you will. Like with the North American Soccer League and the USL, they all consider themselves top quality teams already. So for them not to even be given a chance to go to MLS before some of these teams who have money can buy their way into the MLS, I disagree with that. I still think, and you follow European football as well as anyone, a 20-team league is more than plenty. If you get past 20, now you're really opening up the door for a secondary league or a tiered system.
Although, when you talk about all of those leagues in Europe and around the world, none of them really compare in size with the United States. And even some of the giant countries, like China or Russia, you're still talking about population bases that are in relatively thin stripes. But when you talk about the United States, admittedly, 3/4 lives in the eastern and central, but you still have a considerable population out west and significant population in the mountain range. And just like one of the things that was brought up, what was it, Fox Latino, they actually had an English language blog talking about soccer, and they were talking about a national stadium, and one of the arguments is against that is obviously there are so many deserving cities that would be shut out if you end up just having one place. And I think the United States, more than any, can handle a giant league. Maybe you do what baseball did with an American and a national. Maybe you do some crossover games here or there just so that every so often you get a chance to see the Beckham, the Henry, the Obafemi Martins, maybe every other year, that type of situation. But again, I think eventually once you get to about that 32, I could see then a jump to 36 and maybe 2 18-team leagues where it's in-house and you still get that opportunity for promotion and relegation without it being a financial suicide if you end up going down. So, again, we're taking a look, I think, at the same coin. We're just maybe viewing it just a bit differently, but I think it is a coin that's going to be cashed in before too long.
Yeah, and it's been tough for Florida to keep their teams. Obviously now they're going to have 4, maybe 5 clubs in all these leagues, and we have the North American Soccer League, but no Mexican teams. I mean, if you're called the North American Soccer League, why do we only have Canadian and American teams in there? We should be including some of these.
But that kind of goes back to the situation with England and Wales for their football league, and that's basically because Canada does not truly have a first level tier of soccer teams themselves, where Mexico does. So I would kind of agree with you. And we've seen it in regards to indoor soccer to some success with La Raza, et cetera, but we haven't seen it, and I don't think we ever really will, especially now that we're starting to see the Champions League take more and more import. And I was really rooting for Real Salt Lake a couple of years back, but Monterrey is such a great team, and I kind of have a feeling that Montreal this time around might be able to get it done. The fact that they're closing at home means that if they can stay relatively close in the thin air at Azteca against Club America, who are stronger than they've been in recent years, but I still think it's a bit deceptive. But if they can stay close there, if they get the 50,000 screaming idiots in Montreal, I think that's going to be a difficult place to play, especially on the turf. So we'll see. But I think we need to see, and this is one thing I think MLS gets backwards, but I can understand. It is their championship, so from a marketing perspective, et cetera, you want to promote it. But in my mind, you're taking a look at the priority structure should be the CONCACAF Champions League, then the Open Cup, then the regular season, and then finally, in my mind, kind of the MLS version of the League Cup would be the MLS Cup playoffs. But I love the fact that they're starting to pay more and more attention to the Open Cup, the Supporters' Shield, and now seem to be focused in on the Champions League, because if you're just focused in on that one tournament, that one trophy, that one title, that means only one team can close out the season as a winner. And I think that when we take a look at a team like Montreal that did so poorly last season, but now to see them strengthened, and maybe even with the addition of Kenny Cooper, even stronger than they were, to the point where they can take on some of Latin America's best and have a legitimate chance to beat Club America, a Mexican icon. I think that just goes to show that MLS is stronger, and by that virtue, soccer in North America is stronger.
Yeah, it's certainly growing. I mean, there's no doubt it's growing. And like you said, there are still so many people out there who just aren't convinced that soccer is a mainstream sport in our country. And it's hard for me to fathom, because, with baseball, is such a long season as well. They have the 6 months and the month-long playoff. Hockey is a long season as well. They're getting into their playoffs this week as well. But I find it hard that people are still not accepting soccer as a mainstream sport in this country, Phil.
Well, part of the situation from an MLS perspective, and again, I know why they're doing it, because there is no relegation. You try and leave as many teams alive for as long as possible. But when more than half your teams make the playoff, the regular season, especially when it's about 7 months long, games don't mean anything. With the NFL, you're really only talking about relative game or two perhaps making a big difference, so every game becomes valuable. But when you're playing 30 to 40 games, one or two games here or there doesn't really matter. Baseball obviously has less teams making it. Same with to a slightly lesser extent basketball and hockey. But in my mind, I think that they're also set up to the point where the regular season game just becomes rote until you come down the stretch, maybe to the final month of the season. But from the entire perspective, I think part of the problem for the critics to get their handle on and for the supporters to explain is not just the divergent forms of soccer that we have here in the States, from MLS to NASL to USL to NPSL, now even the re-emerged ASL, et cetera. I mean, all of these have great stories behind them, but this is just a minuscule portion of the soccer fan base that also follows the Premier League, follows La Liga, follows Champions League, Copa Libertadores, Argentina and Brazil and Portugal and Italy and France. And I know, having the chance to work at beINsports and to work at Gold TV before then, I was exposed, but even growing up here in South Florida, the melting pot that it is, I realized that there was much more than just the NASL. And now, in this modern era of technology, where it's not just niches like it used to be. I mean, now you're talking basically huge segments of a demographic, and the avenues to get it to through television, through streaming, through the internet, and also even the instant impact of, say, Twitter or Facebook or Snapchat and Instagram and the likes, that in many ways the people that grew up supporting the mainstream sports just aren't used to this. It's kind of like when you talk about the internet, you have the dark web or the deep web that no one really knows about, but it's there. And I kind of think that from a sporting perspective, soccer is at that point where it's just been bubbling up under the radar. And I talk to some of my friends who are mainstream and just say that it's not there. And basically what's happened is, and you take a look at the newspapers in many extent, it's not just soccer, it's in many aspects, be it politics, be it religion, et cetera. Because of the explosion of new media, you look at the newspapers and they've pretty much written themselves out of existence. In some ways it's kind of gone back to the 1600s, 1700s maybe, where you have 4 or 5 streams of media in a particular city, each covering a particular viewpoint. But that giant megalith of 1 or 2 newspapers per city and 4 or 5 dominant television stations, et cetera, that doesn't exist anymore. And from a soccer perspective, that's because we go to the internet. We know sometimes legally, sometimes otherwise, how to stream the games that we want to see. And we don't need mainstream media anymore, and they just don't realize that. And I think it's a big reason that they've had so many financial woes, is they're not serving the audience that's there.
Yep, that's extremely true. Phil, tell people how they can find you and what games you might be calling this weekend.
Well, first of all, mentioned on Facebook, mentioned on Twitter, even Instagram, but Twitter's probably the easiest one, and that's just first name and last name, so PHILSCHOEN, in the original Yiddish, I guess. But when you get the chance to follow me, it'd be great to hear from you. I always love to interact. Available on Facebook as well. And as far as this weekend, on Saturday, I end up having both the Barcelona and the Real Madrid games, not quite in rapid succession, but Barcelona-Valencia at 10, 7 Pacific, Real Madrid-Malaga at 2, 11 a.m. Pacific, and that's going to be both me and Ray. And then on Sunday, a pretty interesting game from Serie A, especially the way Atlanta has been playing of late, but they're going to be taking on Roma, and that's going to be an early 9 o'clock start, so 6 Pacific. And again, one of the things I love about beINsports is especially with the Liga, which is right now, from a top-flight perspective, one of the most hotly contested, even though everyone thought PSG was going to run away with it. We're still really looking at 6 teams that have a legitimate chance this late in the season for the championship. So to see that is outstanding. I know we're going to have a lot of exciting news coming up in the coming weeks in regards to Copa America with some of the live coverage that's going to be there from beINsports and Espanol, and with beINsports with Ray, me, and Ian and the bunch. But again, one point, if you get the chance, and we've talked about this before, I know just the Argentine match against Ecuador that was up in your neck of the woods in New Jersey, that is just the slightest taste of what the Copa America is like. And everyone looking at Champions League today, you look at the Euros, which are going to be coming up. I mean, these are some of the best players on earth and tactically well drilled, but the passion isn't always there. It seems in some ways the coaches have taken over, regardless of what Jose Mourinho says. But when you look at Copa America, it's not that they actively hate each other, but there's just enough dislike, and maybe also just enough where the players still kind of control their own movements and their chances, where you're going to see the unexpected and you're going to see some fantastic games. So if you kind of want to get an idea that life goes beyond MLS, the NASL, the Premier League, etc., hope you get a chance to watch us this summer from Chile, because it's going to be outstanding.
Fantastic. Yeah, I feel I can't thank you enough for taking the time. Hopefully you can come on again and we can talk some more football, because this is our beautiful game, and I really appreciate you taking the time to come on.
Anytime. Like I said, I've been absolutely blessed and to get the chance to talk about soccer, and even occasionally get paid for it. Is just a dream come true. And I'm really hoping, and I'm starting to see, like I said, with there probably is no better country on earth to be a soccer fan than the United States. I know some people don't agree with that, but I remember a few years back I was counting all of the various avenues to follow on television, and at that point I came up with more than 60 channels that cover significant soccer games, be it from the big networks to the ethnic networks, and now with some of the emergence from beINsports and Univision and Telemundo and even more. We've got to be over 70. There is no better country to be a soccer fan in than the United States, and it's only going to get better and better.
Yeah, man. We absolutely love that. All right, Phil. Well, thanks again for joining us, and I honestly hope you can come back on again. I love talking to you.
Me too, and I hope we get that lined up, maybe even a little bit closer to the Copa America this summer. We'll have plenty to talk about. Yeah,
gladly. Believe me, I will gladly have you on, and we will certainly get deeper into that. That's fantastic. All right, Phil, have a good weekend, man. Enjoy the Spanish football in La Liga and Serie A, and we'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely. Tell Pelé we said hi.
You got it. I hope to even be near him. We appreciate him taking the time out of his busy schedule to come over here and hang out on the Get More Sports podcast. Again, you can catch us every Wednesday at about 1 in the afternoon or so. The podcast will be up, and we appreciate, again, everyone taking the time to listen, and we thank beINsports for letting them have some of their amazing commentators we've had on the show here. That's great. We hope to have a future relationship with them, of course. And again, thanks everyone for listening. We leave you with the sound of a vuvuzela.